Hi, everyone. I want to say thank you for hitting 600 subscribers. I've been getting a lot of support recently, and I really appreciate it. For news today, we got the Dow rising just a little bit in the early morning and then falling towards the end of the day due to PPI coming back lighter than expected. A Russian missile went into Poland, potentially starting World War III. And of course, we got some stocks and charts to go over. And of course, we'll go over my results for the day, which were absolutely terrible. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this every single day, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. Starting off with that inflation report, you can see the indices were up slightly today because the PPI report rose 0.2% instead of 0.4%, once again saying that inflation is slowing down. And that's what they say here from Morgan Stanley. They say inflation is finally on that downtrend, and the peak inflation narrative is gaining traction. Of course, the charts did gap up and then went down throughout the day. Pretty big bump here and then slight recovery into the end of the day. And then for earnings, Walmart shares beat earnings and raised guidance. Home Depot had strong results and maintained their guidance. And then Taiwan Semiconductor, Louisiana Pacific, and Paramount all jumped after filings showed that Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway took holdings in those companies. Next up, we have a Russian missile that went into NATO territory in Poland, killing 2 people. They called an emergency meeting and started raising the readiness of their military units. And they mentioned the fact that discussion is underway to activate Article 4, which of course would mean that all of NATO is going to go to war with Russia, and that would obviously shift everything with the markets and the global powers that are. The United States reiterated that we are going to defend every inch of NATO territory, and that no information has come out to corroborate the press reports. The current understanding is that a missile bound for Ukraine went just across the border into Poland, hitting 2 farmers in that area, just 50 miles from that border. I mentioned if this was not an accident and it was testing the West's resolve, then that's something that they all need to think about very closely. Moving over to the S&P 500, you can see that big gap up that we had in the pre-market, all the way up to 402, came down all the way to the lows, below the lows of yesterday at 394, and then finished here in the midday, and it looks like we're falling a little bit after hours. Going to the 15-minute chart, you can see why this would have been pretty difficult to trade. It looked like we were failing, but still falling really slowly, and then we fell off and found some support right at the lows of yesterday, and then rallied back into that mid-range that we have been in, right at $400, just short, and then looks like we're falling back to that 144 EMA at 397.68. Of course, this still looks weak and it still looks pretty overextended based on the rallies that we had last week, but it is actually holding up much stronger than I thought. Rolled over by this point already, but it seems like the market is going to hold these ranges, and perhaps, just perhaps, this range down here is the bottom, and we need to start thinking about where we're going to end up after this big rally. Moving over to the Nasdaq, similar weakness that we saw here, rallied up more than before, came down into those same lows, actually slightly higher than the S&Ps, slightly higher low here compared to the previous day, and then rallied back up to 290 and then failed from there back into 288.90 after hours. So this still looks pretty weak, kind of in this mid-range. We actually got oversold here on the 5-minute chart in the midday. Going to the 1-hour chart here though, you can see momentum is building to the downside, still in that mid-range on the RSI. You could certainly make a good argument that this is decelerating, and we should expect a range like 275 for support here on the Nasdaq. Moving over to the IWM, still showing strength, did not gap up like the other markets, but we're still in that mid-range, did not even get close to the previous day's lows, sitting right at support here at the 21 EMA, which has been holding pretty strong, tested it here in the midday, and then maintained it throughout the day. So I would expect 187 to hold. If that does break, then we're looking for the next level down in that 148 range. Moving over to Trade Desk for top gainers, had a huge leg up today, finished at 47.79 yesterday, and then got all the way up to 54.80 today. Decent resistance at this point. You could argue that it maybe broke that and is retesting this range. Definitely extended on the RSI. Big momentum here. I would be patient. Probably going to come back down and retest this 144 EMA at some point here on the hourly chart. Just currently at 50.38. Absolutely big gains here on Trade Desk, and it's definitely one to watch going forward. Moving over to CHWY, not on top gainers today, but I've been talking about it for a while, and I did pick up a position here today. Finally kind of topped out here and started cooling off. Got a little bit below the top line here on RSI, and momentum is still cooling down after this really big rally that we had. Do have support right here at 42. I would expect that to hold based on this previous pattern that we had. I do think this is a solid bottom that we've put in place, and I think this pattern is going to change and that we could be potentially seeing a break out of this range and movement upwards. But of course, this is not fully solidified, and the risk to the low side here is around 33 at these previous lows. And lastly, on the day, we have AMD had a big gain today, rallied up all the way to $79 at one point, almost hitting that $80 price range where we are targeting. Definitely starting to cool off, starting to fade here on the RSI. I would wait to see if we can get back into this $70 range to pick up a better price on AMD. But of course, very strong rally, and this looks very strong from here. But I'd like to see if we can get at least a decent pullback, maybe to these previous highs at a $70 range. Moving over to XOP, since we've been talking about it, again, holding that double top here. Looks weak in my opinion. Definitely very low on momentum. Looks like we're getting the cross here on the MACD. RSI is starting to fade. We got that divergence. As long as we get a move down here tomorrow on XOP, there's certainly potential this could move back into this mid-range of 144 or so. Moving over to the dollar was driving the markets once again, dipping early in the morning here, demonstrating that rally in the NASDAQ and growth, but rallied into the midday, causing stocks to tank, cooled off slightly, and then we're looking kind of bullish here again on the hourly chart, potentially targeting that 144 EMA back up at 108.44 or so. That would be back in the same price range as the lows here in mid-September, and it certainly would not surprise me if we got a retest of that range, just based on the amount of downward momentum we've had in the dollar. And if we did get into that range, at least in the short term, I would expect that would give us an overbought reading on the RSI, and then a movement down from there would be nice, which would cause growth stocks and the NASDAQ to continue higher from where we are now. Moving over to growth, jumped up just like the NASDAQ, went sideways, but it was pretty bullish here towards the end of the day, despite the dollar looking a little bit strong, so hopefully this is leading to new highs. And that should lead to some new highs for growth and the NASDAQ. Of course, we still have that resistance in the 91.50 range, just a few tenths of a dollar higher than we are right now. Keep an eye on that. If we do push through this level, though, that can be very bullish for stocks. Moving over to TLT, finally got a little bit of a breakout here. So as inflation continues to cool, we got a big gap up. Then it remained bullish, very strong throughout the day. Looks like we're getting pretty close to that $100 range. There's definitely some resistance there. We're touching the lows that we had in October. It's really solid, good formation, powerful move to that resistance, and then pushed right through, and we're continuing higher, which to me says that we have a solid bottom in place, at least on TLT, which means money might be coming into the overall markets as well. Finishing up with the VIX, this is the big red flag for me right now. We have a big pin to the upside, but this looks kind of bullish, breaking through resistance like we did yesterday, continuing higher today. We're certainly at resistance at the 9 EMA here, but I don't expect this to stop before we get into this 27.50 range at least, and potentially testing resistance up here at 29. So it seems like we're on an upswing here on the VIX. We've been kind of up and down for a while, and we've had the most recent down, and it seems like we're due for that solid up, which means markets should be moving down, at least in the short term. Moving over to my accounts, you can see I absolutely fumbled the day. The stocks were still positive, and I should have made money, but I just didn't. I way overtraded. I was watching the markets all day, and I shouldn't have been. And due to that, I had a big loss for the day, unfortunately. In terms of positions, you can see I did pick up a 43 put here for Friday on CHWY, and a slight loss right now, but not at break even quite yet, 42.85 on the stock. And my break even is going to be down at 42.45, so still okay here. And I'm not opposed to owning this at $43, and I can continue to sell calls to roll this stock if I need to. IWM, classic position, small profit. And then we have the Qs. I made a bunch of trades in here, did not go well. Have a position at 284 and 286, about 1% lower and 2% lower for tomorrow, just to help protect myself from that downward price action. Looking at the charts, you can see we have the downward movement on the 5-minute, and it does not look much better here on the 15-minute. Definitely looks bearish, but potential support at 286.50. Let me know down in the comments section if you think World War III is coming. Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading, and have a great day.